Welcome back to Winners and Losers, everybody. The show that looks at the highs and the lows around world football this weekend. I am delighted to be able to be on this show this week with Christopher Hamill. Oh, what a beautiful weekend of football, Hamster. And what we're going to come into in just a second. How was your weekend, firstly, though, mate?
Yeah, it was busy, mate. Pretty important weekend for us, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Shout out the guys on socials, chopping up loads of clips. We had Bruno Fernandes videos being uploaded immediately after the game had finished, which we'd prepared for well in advance, as was reflected in the comments. I put up a blind, Joe, so my handyman exploits continue. And we had Mikel Silvestre, 5-time Premier League winner on the Football Social. So action-packed. I'm a little bit haggard. I'm growing this moustache until Celtic sign a first-choice goalkeeper. That's my way of protesting. But apart from that, really good, mate. What about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely rotting yesterday, hanging out my arse. But I don't care. I was absolutely willing to, as long as Manchester United got Champions League football, and we did. And we're going to discuss that in just a little bit. But let's start with the talking point, because it is David Silva this weekend, Hamster. Emotional times.
Yeah, we'll keep this short and sweet, a little bit like the man himself. But yesterday was David Silva's last Premier League game for the Citizens after 10 years at the club, 10 trophy-laden years. 4 Premier League titles, 2 FA Cups, amongst other accolades. He's contributed to 217 goals in this 10-year period, helping transform them from relative obscurity, from the noisy neighbours to perpetual winners. The guy is a bloody savage on the pitch. 309 games in the Premier League, 60 goals, 93 assists. Now, we like to look under the hood on this show. We like to be granular, but there feels like very little point doing that, because if you don't acknowledge David Silva's genius, you obviously don't know your football. So instead, let's hear from some other people around football, some famous faces, on their thoughts on Merlin, the wizard, the midfield maestro, because he will be sorely, sorely missed.
I think he's probably overrated. Listen to No, I always think of the players over the last 10 or 20 years who've played in the Premiership, the top players, the Shearers, Henrys, Gerrards, Giggs. He's up there with all them boys. And I look at players who've played over the last 10 years, and I always think when I retired, players I would have loved to play against, but he's one I'm glad I never was around to play against, because I know he would have twisted me inside out. An absolute little genius.
Me, he's probably one of the best players who ever played in the Premier League. Obviously, you can always debate who is what, but I think when you play with him, you can appreciate what he does day in, day out. And I've played with him for 5 years, so I've played a long time with him. We won a lot together, we play well together, and he's going to be a big miss, but yeah, that's why you get young players in and learn from him, and I did that myself, and hopefully we can end the season well for him. It would be great if we would win the Champions League so he can go on in this way.
Now, a lot of people will be wondering where David Silva is going to end up. To be honest with you, I was looking this morning and there's very little news. A lot of people are asking the same questions. It kind of seems split between 3 possible destinations, one being Qatar, one being the MLS, and the final one, most interestingly, I think, is Spain. And in an interview back in 2019, he said that he would like to end his career at Las Palmas, which is, I think, his boyhood local side. So that could be quite an exciting move, although the wage hit would be absolutely monumental, I can imagine, having to go back to Las Palmas. But it could be a nice gesture, couldn't it? Either way, I think obviously got to go down as one of the all-time greats of the Premier League, to be totally honest. Certainly one of the all-time great midfielders. Maybe not quite sort of Stevie G, Frank Lampard level, but I think quite a solid competition for them. That's for sure. Where would you have him in the Premier League great list, Hamster?
Yeah, I mean, he didn't have to carry his team like those various sides. Maybe in the first couple of years as City kind of sorted out their transfer policy, he was their one constant, wasn't he? Along with Yaya Toure and a few others. Definitely top 5 in terms of midfielders. I don't want to be too particular with my answer, because I'll watch this back and I'll be like, I've not done him service, and it will do my OCD in. But what a wonderful footballer. Certainly one of the top 3 most intelligent players, I would say. The way he could adapt his game, the way he could accommodate others. I think his match understanding and his tactical versatility just pretty much unrivaled. Even now, at this age, he's still been outstanding in City's side, hasn't he? Just the mind boggles, mate.
But where do you guys at home think he ranks in terms of the all-time Premier League greats? Is he sort of in your top 5, top 10? Let us know in the comments below. Right, let's go to our first winner. We could have done Chelsea, but I've said no. We're doing Manchester United in this one. It was submitted by Panthradam. I think that's how you pronounce his name. Either way, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's boys continue a fantastic 14-game unbeaten run, overturning a 15-point deficit on Leicester in February to finish third in the Premier League. Not an exceptional points tally, but I couldn't care less right now. We got the job done, up to third. A lot of people in the Football Daily chat, including the likes of Zach, Dave, George, Arsenal, Spurs, Chelsea fans, all had to pay me money because we finished above all of them. This is only United's third top four finish, by the way.
As soon as the match had ended as well, you were calling in the bets.
Yeah,
like
100%.
The minute after.
100%. I'll have all of your money. Thank you very much. But let's not forget, this is United's only, I think, the third time we finished top 4 since Fergie retired 7 years ago. So absolutely not good enough. But nevertheless, I think Ollie has done a really fantastic job second half of the season to get that turnaround done. And let's hear from the man himself right now.
I think the boys have done a great achievement. I think, where we were earlier on in the season to end up third is fantastic by them. They've taken on board so many things, had our ups and downs, and it's of course come down to the last game, and I've got to say it's a wonderful achievement by everyone.
Subsequently, this leaves Leicester in 5th place, which is disappointing. I get it, Leicester fans at home. You spent 325 days inside the top 4, so it does feel like you failed at the final hurdle. But I think Europa League football probably fair over the course of the season. Leicester obviously had an exceptional middle third, but woeful after the break, which we'll touch upon in just a moment. Rodgers has now lost 10 of his 12 meetings with Manchester United as a manager, this being his 5th loss in a row. And they just didn't perform in this game, did they? It was pretty poor, pretty attritional. Manchester United edged possession with 52%. Leicester had 14 shots, only 3 on target to United's 7. So they did sort of huff and puff. But XG had it at 1.4 to 0.7 in United's favour, which of course indicates that they had better quality opportunities, as well as the penalty, which of course counts to around 0.7. It was always going to be a difficult task for Brendan Rodgers to break that hoodoo against Manchester United, wasn't it? Missing key components of his side, Champions League components of his side in the form of Pereira, Maddison, Chilwell, Sancho, of course getting that stupid suspension as well, which kept him out, which meant that Wes Morgan had to return, which meant a severe lack of pace in Leicester's back three, something that really hampered them in their final games against Tottenham and United. And I mean, I looked for a redeeming feature in this game, Tomlinson, from a Leicester perspective, and all I could find was Wilfred Ndidi, who is just Mr. Consistent, isn't he? 7 tackles and interceptions, 3 dribbles, completing all of them, 2 aerial duels as well. And I had a really interesting conversation with Mikel Silvestre on the Football Social about Ndidi. McCubbin wanted him in. Silvestre said he wasn't good enough for Manchester United. So an interesting take from a former pro. I think he'd be an exceptional buy for them.
Yeah. What is he about?
At the other end of the pitch, Leicester didn't really threaten. Vardy had 3 shots, all of them off target, but he did come out of the other end of the fixture with the golden boot, didn't he? The oldest player to win it in the process. In fact, the only player who did have a shot on target from the Leicester side was Kelechi Iheanacho, who got the starting 11, that is. We had a couple come from off the bench in the form of Barnes and Hurst. But Kelechi Iheanacho, puzzling why he came off after 60 minutes again. I thought he was stitching the play up okay, causing United problems, dropping in between the lines and the spaces in between the midfield and defence. Sorry, but anyway, we'll push on. Leicester's record post-lockdown looks a little bit like this. 3 draws, 5 losses, 2 wins. So as harsh as it sounds to say, ultimately, they didn't deserve top 4. So any Leicester fans who sort of feel entitled to it, you're wrong. You've got a warped perception, and the tail end of the season was really bad. And this is what Rodgers had to say about his league position.
The challenge was to was to see if we could arrive in the top 6, and we've been able to do that, Jeff, after this season. It's going to be very, very difficult for us. That's the reality in terms of competing. We don't have that resource to compete with the likes of Manchester United today and these other teams. However, we have to find a way to be competitive, and that's what we'll look to do. So, but yeah, the players will learn from this experience as you haven't been up there and been close. But it's that ambition and mentality and consistency that allows you to arrive there after 38 games, and that's something that we hopefully can improve on next season.
Yeah, from a Manchester United perspective, to be honest with you, I just wanted this game done. We were absolutely shattered. I think you could see it and everybody knew it. Paul Pogba's legs had gone. He couldn't chase back. Bruno Fernandes, there was a moment where he actually couldn't even run. Rashford obviously looks way, way too tired, having to drop deep to pick up the ball. You're not seeing those exciting runs at defenders that we saw at the start of the season. That's just because he's got no legs left, to be honest with you. And I actually thought we were slightly fortunate to win the game. I think a draw probably would have been a fair result in this one. But nevertheless, it came down to the talisman, Bruno Fernandes, yet another penalty. And rightly so, people are being like, yeah, United have got way too many penalties. I think 20 penalties this season, which is a new record. I think 14 in the league, which is another new record. And maybe rightly so, but equally, I don't think a single person would have said that wasn't a penalty yesterday. That he was through on goal. Wes Morgan tackles him from the wrong side. Johnny Evans maybe gets a nick on the ball, but fouls him in the process. It's a definite penalty. And then Bruno does what he does best when the pressure's on, tucks it away. So people could talk about the penalties, but I thought yesterday was a nailed-on search for a penalty. Like you said, though, in the game, I actually thought Kelechi Iheanacho was causing us the biggest amount of problems when he was dropping it in between our back four and Nemanja Matic. Matic was getting a little bit lost. He wasn't sure whether to track Iheanacho or stay into the midfield spaces. And then when he came off, I thought United looked a little bit more comfortable. Overall, though, I'm absolutely just delighted to get into the top four. It probably means we now go out and sign Jadon Sancho. Obviously, we're going to get an extra £50 million through the door for the Champions League. We get an extra £25 million on top of that through the door because of the Adidas contract, means we get a boost there. The rest of our commercial partners will also get a boost across the board. So you're probably looking at an extra £75 to £100 million to spend in the transfer market for United. And I'd imagine they'll pull the trigger pretty quickly on Jadon Sancho. I read a report in The Athletic yesterday that there's a 15 million discrepancy between what United want to pay and what Borussia Dortmund are after, sort of in the £90 million region.
Nothing to United.
So I think United, that 15 million will probably get shortened very quickly. So I do fully expect Jadon Sancho to become a Man United player from this position. I'll be very disappointed if it doesn't happen, because I think we need 3 to 4 top quality players into that team urgently. A quick shout out to Harry Maguire as well. I think he's the first Manchester United outfield player to play every minute of every game since Gary Pallister in 94-95. And I know that people meme him to death, but I think he's had a very solid season, and the fact that his price tag's 80 million is not his fault at all. Yeah, so now we can take a foot off the gas. I think we've got a 15-day break until our next significant game. No offence to LASK, who we play in the Europa League, but we are 5-0 up from the first leg there. So roll the kids out, Ollie, and give these players a break, because they have run themselves into the ground for Champions League football, and they have done brilliantly to get in there. 11 points behind Chelsea in February, 14 points behind Leicester, and they've managed to complete the turnaround. Obviously, the points tally as a whole, incredibly mediocre, but contextually, it's an important moment for Ole Gunnar Solskjaer and his managerial career at Manchester United to get in the Champions League this year. So I'm fucking delighted. Up the Reds. Let's move on.
Time for this week's losers then, and it comes from @DakarSZN. He's gone in. It's a ruthless shout. It is, of course, Watford, with the Hornets ending their 5-year stay in the Premier League in that roller coaster 3-2 defeat to Arsenal at the Emirates. Now, they went into the game under the guidance of Hayden Mullins. Of course, the Pozzos gave Pearson the chop with 2 games left. Watford subsequently needed to better Aston Villa's result at West Ham to ensure survival, but they were 3-0 down after half an hour, weren't they? Conceding 3 goals from Arsenal's first 3 shots on target. That is not the luck you need when you're in a relegation dogfight, is it? Veteran centre-back Craig Dawson, who scored some really important goals for them, actually, in recent weeks, or it might have just been a singular goal, actually. Gave away a penalty with a barge on Lacazette in the opening 2 minutes. He also let a harmless throw in into the box bounce, didn't he? Aubameyang took full advantage of that and hooked in the third. After Kieran Tierney had actually made it 2 with his first goal for the Gunners. Come on, KT. Shout out,
P-roller that was.
Shout out, man like Kieran. It doesn't matter. He can hit him as well, by the by. We'll take it. Team KT. However, I would also say the game did showcase sort of the best of Watford in an odd way. So they've got a lot of fight this side, haven't they? And they pulled a couple of goals back, cutting through the Gunners actually time and time again. They finished the game with 19 shots to Arsenal's 13 and an XG of 4 to Arsenal's 2. So perhaps unfortunate there not to get the result, but we won't dwell on that too much because it might be too painful for certain Watford fans to sit there and listen to. Troy Deeney got his penalty, didn't he? David Luiz conceding a record 5th in a season in the process. And in the second half, it was just Emi Martinez that kept them at bay, made some brilliant saves. Before that, Welbeck, was it a back heel? Yeah, I think it was a back heel, if memory serves me correctly, with the 29-year-old adding his second of the season to set up a tense finish. And there were some other big opportunities missed, weren't there, Tomlinson?
Yeah, definitely. Watford will be a little bit gutted, I think it's fair to say, and Arsenal fans happy to see the game won because Deeney and Dawson missed 2 absolute sitters as well, and Nketiah had a very good chance as well. He went through clear on goal, but overall, Watford probably deserved at least a point out of the game, and it wasn't to be. In the end, they couldn't grab that equaliser, which meant they had to go down to the second tier. And to be honest with you, that decision now to sack Pearson looks disastrous. The man took them from 20th, rock bottom in the league, to 17th, and then they sacked him and dropped back into the relegation spot. So what they're thinking right now sort of puzzles the mind. Been an awful season from the Pozzo, sacking way too many managers, and it now leads to the status of quite a few players. Ismaila Sarr, is he going to stay at the club? I'd imagine Deulofeu is probably going to leave the club. Decore is going to leave the club, and people were asking what's going to happen to the future of Troy Deeney. Is he going to retire from the game, was one of the questions, which led him to this world-class answer.
Last game, full stop.
I'm not that old, cheeky bastard. Sorry, shouldn't swear. Sorry.
Thanks for apologising.
Sorry.
No, I just mean with the knee.
32.
But they're not the only disappointed team on the day to be dropping into the Championship. Of course, we have to talk as well about Bournemouth, who, despite a big old win away at Everton, who, can I just say, have been an absolute disgrace last kind of 6 weeks of football under Carlo Ancelotti. Eddie Howe obviously gutted at the end of the game. You could see that he was getting really emotional. As to whether this means he'll still be Bournemouth manager next season, I'm not too sure, and I don't think he even knows.
I think it's a time for reflection. It's a time to see what the next step is. The club, everything was based around trying to stay in the Premier League and trying to build the club from the inside upwards. I'll have a chat with the people that I need to speak to and see what we do next.
So whilst Bournemouth and Watford both go down, Jack Grealish and Aston Villa were celebrating last night. What an amazing result that is for them. A last couple of games to beat Arsenal and then to get a point away at West Ham is nothing short of sensational from Dean Smith. I know he spent a load of money in the summer, but Grealish had kind of dragged them to this point, and I really hope for his sake Villa allow him to move for a reasonable fee and aren't asking for sort of £100 million for him. I know that he's probably their most expensive asset, but I hope he managed to get some sort of gentleman's agreement in when he signed that new contract, because I really hope he doesn't just get stuck at Aston Villa, Hamill.
Yeah, he has to go because there's going to be no better time to leave his club. He'll go with everyone's good graces this way because, like you said, his performances have been outstanding in the latter half of the season. His goals and assists might have dried up a little bit, but his performances have still been consistently very good. And big clubs, might not be willing to come in for him to the tune of aforementioned fees if he has a mediocre next season. So this feels like the sort of perfect time to go. Doesn't it? And I've got to say, I criticised Aston Villa's transfer policy, Their wages to income ratio is completely unsustainable, but I'm glad they remain in the Premier League at Bournemouth's expense. I don't want to sound unsympathetic, but they're much more of a Premier League club, aren't they, than Bournemouth. So, and I'm absolutely sick of the camera angle from Bournemouth Stadium. It's unacceptable at a Premier League level. So good riddance to that, to be perfectly honest. I think the right sides probably went down. Watford can maybe count themselves a little bit unlucky, but like you said, it's just there's so many variables with Watford. There always is, because it's just so inconsistent off the pitch, and that's just going to catch up with you eventually, isn't it? But yeah, we'll see. I'm sure Pearson will be fine. I'm sure the Pozzos will bring them back up at some point. But yeah, I think ultimately the right teams went down. What do you make of it?
Yeah, to be honest with you, going into the final day, I wanted Aston Villa to stay in the division. I'm really delighted for Dean Smith to see that happen as well. And I think some of the players in that team are very solid. I know maybe Mikey or Pato, something like that, put Douglas Luiz in like the worst player of the season contention. I actually think Douglas Luiz has been really excellent for Villa last 5 weeks since lockdown. One of their best players. And I know there was a few rumours about Man City obviously having a £20 million buyback. I don't think he's that level. But a team like Everton, who have been appalling in midfield, could do a hell of a lot worse than Douglas Luiz. Grealish is going to get his move. I'd imagine John McGinn will have a fair few interested parties. So yeah, Villa, I'm delighted they're still in the division. People will say, oh, well, that means you're not going to sign Grealish. Well, to be honest with you, it's not my money that we're paying for Jack Grealish, or Tottenham are paying for Jack Grealish, or Arsenal. So I wish Aston Villa all the best, because yeah, I agree with you. I think they're the most Premier League club of any of those three. But yeah, either way, Watford and Bournemouth, down they go. Bournemouth, I do have concerns they could be a bit of a stone club that just go Championship.
Stone club, is that a technical term?
Just like drop like a stone, do you know what I mean?
Fair.
Like just go from the Championship straight down to League One, because they've got a tiny stadium. They're going to take a battering in terms of the wages, because I believe quite a few of the players don't have relegation clauses in there, and they have spent a fair bit of money. I think Eddie spent 60 or 70 million pounds on Liverpool players alone. So I think I'd be worried if I was a Bournemouth fan. But Watford, yeah, like you say, they'll probably come back up in the next few years. So that is the end of the show. Hammer, what should the people do next?
Yeah, it's been a hell of a season, hasn't it? Winners and losers will be back with transfer winners and losers, so don't you worry your pretty little heads about that. Next, head over to the podcast channel. Only 3 weeks old, we've already got 15,000 subscribers. So go and join those guys over there. Of course, we've got ERU coming out in an hour, and I did a one-on-one on Manchester City and their billions of pounds yesterday on EFD. I'd appreciate it if you went and dropped that comment also. So, you know, not a massive ask, but just go and watch at least 3 videos.
Yeah, thanks very much for watching, guys. Up the Reds.